So as Elise touched on a little bit, I grew up in Houston, Texas, in a really, 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 really conservative family. And I didn't think about organic food. I didn't think about anything to do with the environment. I didn't know anything about food allergies. I was recruited by Exxon and Enron out of business school because I was there on a full scholarship, and I graduated as the top woman in my class. And I have a tendency to get bored pretty easily, so I thought working with a group of guys managing $20 billion in assets would be a really fun use of my time. And I was the only woman on the team, and so the guys said, we're going to have you cover the food industry. And I thought, that is a really bad idea. Because I'm someone for a very long time who always gave up Diet Coke for Lent. I didn't know how to cook. I burnt noodles. And I kept trying to tell the guys, I'm like, you really don't want me covering the food industry. And they said, no, you're fine, you know. So I got in there and I learned those business models inside and out. We had to interview these management teams. It was so much fun. We probably had 6 teams through our offices every single day. And we'd sit there and we'd grill these guys, and it was absolutely a job that I adored. And so when my husband and I wanted to start a family, I said, you know, I really don't want to leave this for too long. So if we're going to have kids, let's do it really quickly. I'm pretty type A. And so we had 4 kids in 5 years. And I had it all planned out. You know how you do when you're kind of in your late 20s and early 30s. I had it all planned out. I was going to have these kids. One of the guys that was one of our derivatives traders, I recruited him out to Colorado, where we had moved out to take a job for my husband. We were going to start a hedge fund out there. We had been on a hedge fund back in Houston. Had it totally mapped out. Until we had our 4th child. And then it was one morning over breakfast in January of 2006. It was the end of the month. And I had met Martha Stewart when she was taking her company public. She came through our offices, and the swag was beach towels and beach bags and cookbooks. And I thought the building was going to tip over. There were so many people in the room. And everyone was having her sign these cookbooks. And I thought, if I have her sign the cookbook, I'm going to give it away, and then I don't have Martha Stewart's signature. So it's a lot more likely that I'm going to hold on to this prospectus of this IPO than a cookbook. And so I had her sign the prospectus. And for a long time, that was what was in our kitchen. And so that morning, about as Martha Stewart as I could get was scrambled eggs, Lego My Eggo waffles, and blue yogurt. And when my 4th child started to fuss in her high chair, I thought, she just must be tired. I hadn't seen food allergies, totally clueless. So I took her out, I put her upstairs in her crib, and this was my 4th kid. I have no idea. It gives me the chills. Every time I say it, I have no idea why I went upstairs to her room to check on her that morning. But when I did, her face was swollen shut. And again, being totally clueless on this space, I looked at my older 3 children and I said, what did you put in her face? And they all gave me those really blank little kid stares where you know they're telling the truth. And I just had this moment of complete and sheer panic. And so I grabbed her, I raced her to the emergency room. I said, what is going on? They said, this looks like an allergic reaction. What did you feed her? And I said, waffles, yogurt, scrambled eggs. And they said, those are 3 of the top 8 allergens. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, how am I going to do my job as a mother if this child is allergic to food? What happens to a child if they're allergic to food, who has 3 older siblings who don't even know how to read yet? How am I going to be able to mother this child, and how am I going to be able to keep her safe in my own house? And for somebody who wanted to be in control of everything, that moment was so incredibly paralyzing and humbling and terrifying. And so when we got her home, and we got everything under control. Having been an analyst, the first thing I wanted to see was the data, because I had dismissed food allergies. I hadn't understood the severity of it, and I thought, numbers tell a story when emotion can get in the way. And I wanted to hear the story that the numbers had to tell. When I had been working as an analyst, there was a woman who was on one of the desks, and I remember once she said, "Your life will be defined by how you handle the curveballs, because life will throw them. It's defined by how you handle them." And this was a big one. So as I started digging into the numbers, and granted, this was back in 2006, the number of children that have food allergies today is somewhere around 1 in 13 children. That's about 2 kids in every classroom. And if you were to take the entire food allergy population in the United States and put it together, it'd be the 5th largest state in our country, behind Texas, California, New York, and Florida. That demographic is that big. And nobody was talking about it. But here's the thing, when you're digging into data on kids, and again, the conservative in me was like, I'm going to the CDC, I'm going to the FDA, I want to go to the USDA. I wanted to have arguments and data that I knew I could defend if I was sitting across the dinner table from my dad. And it was shocking what I learned. From 1996 until 2007, the rate of hospitalizations related to food allergic reactions. So these are people checked into the ER. It's not some mom saying she had a food allergy or a kid has a food allergy. These are ER check-ins. The rate of hospitalizations from 1996 until 2007 increased 265%. And all I could think is, why aren't we talking about this? How is this impacting productivity? How is this impacting education? What happens in a company when the parents get yanked because they get this call? What happens to productivity and innovation and entrepreneurship when we're this wrapped up managing disease? And I learned that 1 in 3 kids in the US now have what is referred to as the 4 A's, either autism, allergies, ADHD, or asthma. 1 in 3 kids. And here we were talking about obesity. Why weren't we talking about this? This generation of children has earned the title of Generation RX because of the number of medications that they're on. It wasn't like this when we were kids. A PB&J and a carton of milk were not loaded weapons on a lunchroom table when we were kids. And all I kept thinking is, what has changed? Because epidemics, they have a trigger when we have an epidemic like this. We have an epidemic happening in the health of our children. They are more medicated than any other generation. If 1 in 3 has one of the 4 A's, 1 in 2 minority kids are expected to be insulin dependent by the time they graduate from high school, and 1 in 3 Caucasians. Cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in American children under the age of 13. The problem with this kind of data is you cannot unlearn it. And there was a period when I was learning this where I thought, what in the world am I supposed to do? I am one mom. This is information people don't want to hear. What am I supposed to do? We spend more on healthcare and disease management in this country than any other country on the planet. 20% of our GDP is spent managing disease. 20%, when that could be going into innovation, productivity, entrepreneurship, is tied up in managing sickness and disease. And I thought, if I were to go to the CEO of any of these companies that I sat down with and said, how do you want to spend your money? They're not going to say 20 cents on the dollar, let's manage disease. They'd want to get that number down. And I thought, how do we get that number down? The kids are 30% of the population and 100% of our future. And if they are Generation RX today, what is that going to look like in 20 years? So as I was looking at all of this, a few years ago, I had written an article because Bloomberg had run one. And they were sort of highlighting what was happening with Mylan and the cost of EpiPen. And the thing is, when you've been at it as long as I have, you know the journalists who have children with food allergies. You know their names, you know their ages, and you know exactly what's going on in that family. And the Bloomberg journalist that wrote the article had a kid with food allergies. And I said, why is no one talking about this? And he said, I don't know, Robyn. And then I was contacted by a mom who had lost her son when he was 14 years old to a life-threatening food allergic reaction. And she said, why is no one talking about this, Robyn? And I said, Georgina, I promise I will talk about it. And she said, you're the only one who will make the noise. And I thought, how in the world can I not use my voice when this mother has a son who no longer can? And never in a million years did I expect to take on any of these corporations. But as I began to bring attention to Epigate, what was fascinating was that 1 in 13 number, it doesn't care what side of the aisle we're on, it doesn't care where we work, it doesn't matter if we're in Congress. And when I appeared on Fox News and the anchor said, Robyn, what do you think needs to happen? I said, we need to have a congressional investigation. There is a monopoly. They have jacked up the price of this drug so high that lives are at risk. And thankfully, because of the members of Congress who are impacted by this condition and disease, there was. And what I have seen over and over and over in my work is that courage is so contagious. When one person stands up to speak the truth, it inspires other people to do the same. But the most important lesson that I have learned is that when you speak that truth, it cannot be from a place of fear. It cannot be from a place of anger. It cannot be from a place of rage or frustration. The reason that we feel all of those emotions around anything is because we love. And when you speak from that place of love, it is absolutely unstoppable. So as I began speaking out on this, a girl that I had played soccer with in high school said, hey, I have this friend running this TED event in Austin, you should speak. And I thought, I chose finance because I liked being behind 5 computer screens. I really don't want to be on the stage by myself. At that point, my book had come out. Companies like Kraft and Burger King were trying to get me to not appear in the press. There were all kinds of attempts to discredit, marginalize, shoot the messenger. And I thought, the last place I want to be is on a stage by myself telling this story. And a friend that I had made along the way was running this big advertising agency in Boulder. And he had this little web show. I think maybe like 400 young ad guys watched it. And he said, I need to have you on this show, Robyn. And I was like, Alex, there's no way your clients are Domino's, Burger King, Kraft, Coca-Cola. And he's like, no, I really want to have you on the show. And I thought, okay, try it. A couple days before we were supposed to tape the show, he looked at me, he sent this email and he said, I'm really sorry, I totally screwed up. I can't have you on the show. And I was like, no, just don't worry about it. I get it. I've been doing this long enough to know. And 2 days later in the New York Times, an article ran. It said, founder Alex Bogusky quits agency he founded, Crispin Porter Bogusky. And I emailed him and I said, I don't know what just happened, but I feel so proud of you. And he emailed back and he said, wait until you hear the story. This little web show, and I'm not kidding, it was maybe 400 ad people that would watch it. Kraft came to the agency and said, if you have Robyn on that show, we're pulling the account. And he said at that point, his heart was so disconnected from his head that he sat down with his family and he said, I can't do this anymore. And he quit the agency he founded. And I remember the day he told me, we're sitting across the table, and I'm just like, wow, this is a huge decision. And the responsibility of it, I felt it enormously on my shoulder. So when I was asked to give this TED Talk, I thought, I have to say yes. I have to be brave enough to say yes to this thing. And before I took the stage, I said, just please let my heart speak. And it was in Texas, and I can say this as somebody from Texas, they're not on the leading edge of this curve when it comes to organic food. And when I finished, they all started to stand up, and I thought, there must be a slide behind me that's like seventh inning stretch. And they had stood up because they were there. They were right there. And they wanted to be part of this thing. And I thought, if Texas wants to be part of this, we've got a movement. And so when that thing posted online, the kids are all teenagers now, and I'm like, man, you think you want something to go viral online when it's actually you and that thing going viral? It is a totally different feeling. So this thing went viral, and it's been translated into dozens of languages, and it's seen worldwide. And as that was happening, I will be honest, the fear in the pit of my stomach was so deep and real. I'm thinking, Monsanto hates me. Are we allergic to food, or what's been done to it? In 1996 to 2007, 265% increase in the rate of hospitalizations related to food allergies. The first GMO was introduced on the market in 1996. Correlation is not causation, I know that. I'm an analyst. But a correlation of that magnitude merits investigation, and that starts with transparency, and that starts with labels. So as I was beginning into this new frontier of somebody who wanted to hide behind a desk but had to be out in front of everybody, I had to find inspiration in people who had been consistently told, no, shut up, you're wrong, get out of the way, because that's what was happening. And so I did a little bit of digging. And Elvis, when he went to the Grand Ole Opry to sing for the first time, the truck driver said he was so bad that he should just go back and be a truck driver. And Steven Spielberg was rejected from the film school he wanted to go to 3 times. Michael Jordan, everybody knows that story. He didn't make his high school basketball team. And Missy Copeland was told she didn't have the figure. She was the wrong body type to be a ballerina. And so I started to realize when people tell you, no, you can't do that, it just means that it hasn't been done before, and either they can't or they're not brave enough to try. And what I found in these movements, because it's Generation RX, and because these moms are home, and I don't care if they are working on Wall Street, running a food company, or a stay-at-home mom, or a teacher, what is happening to the health of these kids is a truth that is so profound and so real that she will amplify it. And we have used social media over and over and over again to amplify these messages. When we started to do it around Mylan and Epigate, Mylan lost $3 billion in market value. The game has changed with social media, these handheld devices, and these apps. It's put the power in the hands of the people. A lot of these companies, when they see these things, when that talk went online, I was terrified. 2 days later, I get an email from the CEO of Nestle's frozen food division. And he said, you can say things I can't say, Robyn. I need you to come out here to Ohio and speak to my team. And as I was there for a couple of days working with his team, I said, Frank, you know this. What are you afraid of? And he did not hesitate. He said, my board of directors. And I thought, unless we have an answer for the shareholders, we do not have an answer for the stakeholders. And so for the first decade, I spent a lot of time educating the consumers. The shift now is to educate the capital. That if they're going to play and they're going to participate, we need them investing in this too. And so if you think about this community as the size of the 5th largest state in our country, it's not just nonprofits that we need. This is an entire industry that needs to be built. We need food companies, we need manufacturing facilities, we need a whole lot more when it comes to the medical device market. There are so many opportunities to do good and to do well. These companies, the Fortune 500's biggest food, beverage, and tobacco companies, 60% of the companies that were on that list in the year 2000 are no longer there. 15 years from now, what's that list going to look like? Who's going to be on it, and what companies will have been built? Because the question we have to ask about our food system today is how much of this stuff is safe? I did not think to ask that when I was sitting on the desk. I knew why they were putting all the fake stuff in and taking the real stuff out. It drove profitability. It helped their margins. Makes a ton of sense unless you have 4 little kids eating that stuff. And all of a sudden you're reading those labels and you're thinking, what is this doing to all of us? 1 in 2 men are expected to get cancer now in the United States, and 1 in 3 women. When I heard that statistic, I thought, what are we waiting for? 1 in 1? And this question still hasn't been answered. Are we allergic to food or what's been done to it? Unless we know what's been done to it, there is no traceability, there's no accountability, and guess what? For the companies making it, there's no liability. And that's exactly how they want it. So it's our job to continue to demand clean and safe food. And what is absolutely awesome is that the companies that did not want me speaking 8 years ago are now the ones saying, Robyn, what do we do? Because 8 in 10 US households are now purchasing some organic. It's not a hippie trend anymore. Families are realizing that they have the opportunity to get this stuff out of their food system. And there's a lot that we can't control, but we can control the food that we put into our grocery carts. And this demand for free-from food is skyrocketing. The Non-GMO project started a couple of years ago. From 2010 to 2016, they've seen a 7,200% increase in demand for non-GMO food. Monsanto right now is executing a merger with Bayer. The only reason that they're going into that merger is because of what's happening here in the United States. They still have an incredible monopoly, and as I was watching that congressional hearing with Zuckerberg up there the other day, I thought, I hope they bring it with Hugh Grant and Monsanto. And what about Heather Bresch and Milan? Let's get her back up there too, because these monopolies have put the health of our families at risk. So we need a new prototype. And if you think back, once upon a time, everybody thought the fax machine was awesome. The only place I see one now is in a bank. So we need a new prototype. And just as all the digitalization completely changed the way that we communicated, we can do that with food too. Less than 1% of our farmland is organic. That is insane. That means we're importing organic food to meet this growing demand from China, Russia, Romania, Uruguay. We should be converting US farmland, capturing that economic upside for our farm economy, for our communities, for our food company. And we need superheroes. For the food allergy community alone, the best bet is on transparency. If we know what we're eating, we know what we're putting into our bodies. It doesn't matter if you're dealing with diabetes, cancer, food allergies. Transparency is what is safe. Give people the right to choose what they want to eat. And none of us can do everything. I think the enormity of that hit me in the early years. I thought, this is a massive thing we're tackling. It's like turning the Titanic. And early on, I know it was because the kids were all so little, I thought, I cannot do this by myself. We need as many people as we can to take the stage and be part of this across all industries to participate. The opportunities in front of us are absolutely enormous. The business opportunities in front of us are enormous. To support organizations like EAT, with the incredible talent that they've assembled already. And here's the thing about these nonprofits. People are really, really excited to donate stuff for free in the beginning, and then it stops, which is why these fundraisers are so incredibly important. Because a PSA like that is absolutely golden. And they need the ability to continue to do this kind of work. And so as we demand transparency in our food system, these big companies are listening. They know that we're voting with our wallets every single day. And they're trying to figure out how to create that change. There are all kinds of impact investing funds that are participating. They're figuring out how to convert the farmland. They're figuring out how to tackle our water issues. It's an incredible time to participate in something that actually feels really good. And again, when you do it from this place of love, and I don't care if it is the love for your own child that has food allergies, or if it is an incredible patriotism that you feel for the love of our country, it is so unstoppable. And I have realized, when I've been asked to debate companies like Monsanto, and I've flown to Chicago to show up on these panels, and they don't show up, I realized in a lot of ways they're more afraid of us than we ever could have been of them. Because the truth is so incredibly powerful. And so I invite each of you, in whatever role you want to play in this, to be as brave as you can, to set that example in your own life, for your children, for your friends, for your family. The opportunity in front of us is so great. I think about that 1% of our farmland is organic. It is absolutely insane. And for some reason in my head, I picture it as this football field. Like we're way back here on the 1 yard line, and we've got this whole field in front of us that we get to run. And that, to me, is just the most exciting and incredible opportunity that we have in business and as a country. And my goal is that a generation from now, we're able to say with the investments we've gone into the microbiome, what we've done with soil, what we've done with these devices, what we've done with our food system, this incredible overhaul, that a generation from now, we will be able to say that we have ended allergies together. So thank you guys so much for supporting this amazing organization.